Louisiana versus all y'all's Recruit That Boot. He's Sam Spiegelman, and he has finally warmed back up from a cold weekend out in the DFW for that OT7 tournament. I'm Jarrett Roser, and I did not ultimately make the trip to go out there in the light rain early in the weekend and then cold temps all the way through. And you can grimace as much as you want to now, but I think I was more happy with my weekend than you were for chunks of that, because even just watching the stream, it looked pretty rough. We're going to talk a lot about what Sam saw at OT7, as well as his and the guys over at Rivals new rundown of the 5 stars for the 2026 class, and then talk about some high school coaching news in Louisiana toward the end of the show as well. But Sam, dude, it looked so miserable. I told you that before we started. I was watching some of those games for Flow, and it obviously did not go well for them overall on the weekend. We'll talk some about that, but just, I mean, even looking at you guys on the sidelines, no one looked real excited about the weather that y'all were dealing with at the moment. Talk me through the weekend and what you'll remember most about week 4 of this OT7 season.
Yeah, if anyone ever catches me on a Friday night or Thursday night, a Saturday night on the sidelines, you see this grimace, this face. It's lit with excitement. The happiness exudes from this face all the time, especially in public settings, especially football games. This was not one of those weekends. Listen, my first week at OT7, I was really blindsided by the cold. I thought that I had better prepared. By that, I mean I brought 3 different sweatshirts that I could layer on top of each other. Why I didn't go with the jacket option is beyond me. So listen, most of Saturday was really enjoyable. A lot of great players, a lot of great action. Temperatures really started to get cold around the 6 o'clock, prime time slate, where I did have to double up the sweatshirt, but really nothing compared to the bitterness and depression that I did feel on Sunday. I thought about leaving multiple times before the second game even started. The wind was really the X factor for me. It was cold. Cold is fine. But when you have the wind chill factor from the wind, it becomes enormously questionable why you're there. I did end up staying till 12-ish, and I'm super proud of my body of work on the weekend. That is the most adults, children, teenagers, people of all ages unanimously uncomfortable in that setting, that nobody wanted to be there by Sunday when I left. So I felt like great event. I personally had a great time. Thought I covered it pretty well. I defrosted about 2 hours into the drive. I think I was in about Waco, Texas, and I finally felt my fingers again on the wheel. So yeah, we missed you, Jarrett. I wish you would have been there, but man, I would have just been in your ear complaining the whole time. So you probably saved yourself plenty of Sam drama.
Yeah, no doubt. As I was trying to figure out the decision whether to hit the road or not, up to the last minute Friday, essentially, I'm just watching, and it keeps telling me it's going to rain a chunk of the day on Saturday, and the temperatures are bad. And I'm thinking, do I really want to put myself through a 6 to 7 hour drive there for it to get potentially miserable, if not schedule get messed up, and then have to turn around and drive it back the next day? And as I was sitting, toastily on my couch Saturday night watching those epic Final Four games, I was feeling really good about my decision. But let's talk about some of these performances. I know that there were guys, and we'll start with the Flow team that made some positive impressions for you, even on a rough weekend overall. Talk me through it. I mean, Jabari Mack, a guy we've talked about over and over again on this show, someone who I thought had kind of an up and down weekend in a lot of ways, but was as much of a bright spot probably as almost anyone. He was on your overall top performers list from the weekend. Take me through what stood out about Jabari for him to secure a spot on there, as well as who were some of his Flow teammates that you thought had some positive takeaways.
Yeah, Jabari Mack was a top performer my first week at OT7 about a month ago, and to see him come back this time, he's committed to LSU. Everyone, when you commit anywhere, it just adds a whole fan base, a whole wave of attention on you. And Jabari was far and away the best player for Flow on the weekend. I mean, he led them in receiving. He is like a ninja when it comes to like insane catches. Like I've never seen anyone just make these high level difficulty catches as make look so easy as Jabari does. He did have his fair share of drops. I think there were more attention drops overall, but obviously his ability to come down with the ball for contested catches, his ability to get open, his ability to get up, his range, his route running is fantastic. He's got a great release. We talked about it in some podcasts before, but he's playing at north of 200 pounds, and he's bodying receivers, and he's playing a physical brand of football on the outside that you love to see. He took a couple of hits coming down with some catches, and his body placement, his we talk about the drops, but some of the catches that he did come up with, they're really out of this world. And he finished, I think, in the top 3 or 4 on the weekends for top performers. The only receivers I felt had a better weekend overall, Vance Spafford, who's committed to Georgia, and maybe his Cali Power teammate, Mark Bowman, who's a out of this world tight end. But Jabari, even though, Flo's success on the field didn't really translate very well to the records, Jabari just continued to show that he's one of the best in the country. We recently moved him, I think, into the top 50 or 60 in the country, because at OT7, at Under Armour New Orleans, what Jabari does on Friday nights, in a limited capacity for the Destrehan offense, he has just shown a whole other another area of his game that when he does have volume, when he does get the targets, he's extremely productive, and he's a real game breaker on the outside at receiver. Beyond Jabari, I'm falling in love with Easton Royal. He played largely on the defensive side of the ball for Flo this weekend, which is a whole other topic in discussion. But when he did have chances on offense, he's extremely twitchy with the ball in his hands. He can make defenders miss. He accelerates so quickly and can get open so fast. There's a smoothness and an acceleration factor that I really can't put my finger on it. I would have loved to see him get more involved with the offense, but anytime he did touch the ball, he was absolutely electric and found the end zone on a few occasions. And by the way, watching him play nickel, the kid moves laterally really well. I don't think there's anything he can't do on the football field. So I'm super excited to see what he does for Brother Martin as a junior this year. And then, of course, my guy, Peyton Houston. Peyton went through what a lot of quarterbacks go through on their first day of action at OT7, where the 5-second timer and getting adjusted to the speed of the OT7 7-on-7 setting. Peyton threw a couple of picks on day 1, and he came back and was on. He was Peyton Houston for day 2. You saw him distribute the ball really well. We're talking about windy and bad conditions, but Peyton can rifle it through those conditions. He was really on time, really accurate, put it where really only his receivers could get their hands on it on Sunday's action. We saw the offense for Flo really just turn up as the tournament went on. Obviously, like I said, it didn't really yield the results, but Peyton, I think, like any quarterback, and we know he's a young kid, for him to get better as the tournament went on, to show more signs of what we would expect from a Peyton Houston-led team, I thought, obviously, if it matches the description, it matches what we expect from Pop Houston. Yeah.
A couple of just notes piggybacking off of some of those guys, you guys in the new rankings for Rivals, which we'll talk about more in a second. As I mentioned, Jabari is sitting there number 59 nationally among all prospects, and so right there in the middle of that top 100 again for all positions. The drop dynamic was interesting to me, because that's one of the things that we talked about. I kept saying how much I was impressed by his seeming growth this fall in terms of being more consistent as a go-to guy and not having those types of lapses. And obviously there's a big difference between a Friday night in the fall where you're playing for your school and a Saturday in Dallas for a 7-on-7 team you're playing, a couple of weekends a year with, and it's freezing and all those things. And so that's just kind of an area for him that I think he wants to continue to fine tune, and regardless of setting, continue to prove himself every time out under any circumstances, that he's the guy, that he's the top of his potential, the top of his ceiling, and not let those things kind of creep in. Easton, I talked to him after the first trip out there a couple weeks ago, where he also played some defense, and asked him how he felt about that in that setting with sort of the timing and the level of competition from some of those other top receivers from around the country. And he said it was pretty eye-opening at first to just kind of adjust to the speed of some things that were happening out there. But he started to feel a little bit better over the course of that first weekend about how it was going. And for him, I've been so impressed with him in a lot of ways from early in his high school career. I mean, as an 8th grader, a guy that seemed to have a good feel for finding pockets on the field, getting open, catching everything thrown his way. His build was strong for a kid that age. I didn't realize until this sophomore year the speed that he has, and he just posted the other day that he's already run a 10.68 on the track this year as a sophomore, and we saw some of what he brought to the field this fall on some deep routes and in the return game. And we've seen a little bit of that in the 7-on-7 season as well, with some of the deep routes and his acceleration after the catch to really kind of break away and put some distance between him and some of the other top prospects from around the country. And so look, this weekend was rough for those guys, 0-6 overall, but there's definitely, I agree with you on some of these positives. And for Easton, the guy who was kind of the more under radar of the 3 guys you just mentioned, I'm just more impressed with him. I mean, gradually month in and month out.
You mentioned the 10.6 on the track. We love that he runs track. We love the verified speed, because what we see on tape is him stretching the field, him doing things and getting open so quickly and making plays with the ball in his hands. He also clocked 4.41 at Under Armour in New Orleans. Listen, I'd say this also, getting to eyeball him in person though this last month a couple of times. He's a sophomore going into his junior year, and he's got, like you said, he's got a pretty substantial frame. He's got a build that he can play through contact, that he can take some blistering hits, and he can also reach that top end speed. And I don't know who's going to catch him. He's definitely one of the bigger stock up prospects, because that 2027 class, you have Raekwon Williams, you have Miguel Whitley, and you have Easton Royal, all out of the Catholic League. And those are 3 of the best receivers in the country. And this offseason has been really helpful for slotting them and, seeing who is the best of that sophomore group.
We're not that far removed. I mean, just in the last year or so, of some non-recruiting New Orleans reporters asking, who are kind of the next big names out of the city. They didn't kind of see who was coming necessarily. And now it seems like just in the Catholic League alone, where you're talking about the Purple Knights dynamic duo and Easton and Zyron Forstall, who we talked about recently for Jesuit, coming on strong. I mean, not the Catholic League right now, but Rontre Carter is a guy that obviously has some notable Power 4 offers. And so just one after another, some really notable names popping up all over the place. And that's, not even getting into the newer Catholic League, Edna Carr joining that district here in recent years, and everything that we know that Bryce and company have continuing to roll through there. But use that as a little bit of a transition to some rankings talk, because one of those 2026 guys for Carr is one of the new 5 stars for Rivals nationally, a top defensive tackle there in Big Rich, who is now y'all's number 19th prospect in the country overall. And so he is certainly one of the key takeaways from this Rivals update for Louisiana fans. Tristan Keys is now the number 1 wide receiver up there at number 7 overall. Blaine Bradford still in the thick of the mid-teens of the rankings. He's at number 13, now Ohio State commit Blaine Bradford. And we'll talk about a couple of these other guys as well, Booby Feaster, Haven Finney, and on down the list. But let's start with Big Rich, a guy who we were so impressed with coming off of his junior season. And when I talked to him on Christmas Eve, he's telling me, look, my goal is to be the number 1 defensive tackle in the country. I want to be the guy. I don't want to be one of the best. I want to be the best. I want to be a 5-star. Excellence, essentially. How did conversations go with where to place Rich and make sure he gets his 5th star, and just what you guys have seen from him to continue him rising up those rankings?
Well, you mentioned Blaine Bradford first. Let's just point out that Blaine's father told me that his recruitment has been shut down, by the way, plus you might want to stow that away for next week. I think after the state championship game, that was when Big Rich made his biggest leap, at least in my mind. We vaulted him up into the top 30 of the Rivals 250. And I think, like, you obviously know why. What he did in that state championship game, they're still buzzing about on the West Bank and all over South Louisiana. And then seeing him in the Under Armour next setting. The thing about Carr kids is, when you play with, that defensive line has Corey Adams and it has Big Rich Anderson and it has more size, and they have linebackers that going to Division I schools and a secondary littered with stars. You want to kind of isolate some of the stars and see how they do in the camp setting. And Big Rich absolutely destroyed the New Orleans camp setting. At 340 pounds, he's bringing out the patented Taiji Hill spin move and twisting offensive linemen here, in different circles. He's using power. He's using finesse. Like I said, 340 pounds, he's bouncy. He moves so well. He's got not only an explosiveness off the line, but a motor for an interior lineman that I think is pretty, for lack of better terms, rich for someone of this stature. Talking to obviously his coaches at Carr, whether it's Bryce or Coach Howard or the D-line coach, Carr has had a stellar string of defensive linemen come there over the program's history. And I think that it's pretty clear that they view Big Rich as the best defensive lineman that has come from Edna Carr. I think he showed it to them at different points last year. And I think you and I caught up to them, around December 13th or 14th. We saw it as well. And to me, I don't know how much better he can get over time, right? And when he gets to LSU, they're gonna reshape his body in the weight room. And but him right now, compared to the number 2 defensive lineman in the country, to me, it's just there's a drastic gap between Big Rich and everybody else. The force and power and athleticism and production he's showing at 330 or so pounds on the field and in these camp settings has been absolutely, like you said, a statement from him. He wanted to show that he's the best, and I think he has done that pretty convincingly over the past 3, 4, 5 months. It'll be interesting to see how he does as a senior, of course, because as motivated as he is, you'd love to see how much better can you get from year to year. That's always we say it all the time, like, what is a step that you can take from year 1 to year 2 and then to year 3, which is really hard to do, but only the best are able to do it. So as we kind of now rank him as a 5-star, top 20, 25 in the country, I just want to know what he has in store for us next to keep ascending.
And we know Big Rich well enough that he's probably got something very much in mind to keep striving and to be very excited to show us come fall. His growth to this point has been so impressive because you talk about it. It maybe took us some time to catch up to the mentality from Carr coaches of, not just this kid has a chance to be great, because I think we were pretty on board with that very early in his career, even as kind of the big baby freshman version of Big Rich. You saw some of the potential that was there, but to say that you're in the mix of, is this the best defensive tackle to come through a place like Edna Carr where there is a rich tradition is a big statement. And to watch Bryce and those guys challenge Rich at points earlier in his career to chase this sort of thing and continue to try to be the best version of himself, when Rich will tell you that, as a younger version of himself, he wasn't always as focused or as bought in as he should be. And so to be able to have that conversation with him and for him to buy into that, take that to heart and go chase the best version of himself has been really impressive to watch. And he is doing some phenomenal things now and does not remotely seem satisfied with any of it. And so that's a pretty scary proposition for some offensive linemen and quarterbacks and running backs and everybody in that Catholic League.
Yeah, I can remember meeting Big Rich for the first time when he was a freshman, and I looked at Bryce and I said, "That's a freshman," and he said, "Yeah." He said, "Don't put his name out," and I was like, "Okay, great." And you know what? The way they do things at Carr, I love it because they have a method to their madness, and that's all you can really ask for. And what it does is it challenges the kids from a maturity level, from a work ethic, a drive, determining your goals and what you're going to do to accomplish them. And people wonder why Carr has so much success year in and year out, despite the kids come and they go. There's different kids all the time. coaches come and go. They're, half the coaches are head coaches elsewhere. And it's that culture from within the program that, they knew that Big Rich was potentially going to be the best defensive lineman in the state or the country. And yet they humbled him and made him work for that. And now, as we get ready for his senior year, he's committed to LSU. He's a number one defensive lineman in the country. He's a 5-star prospect, and he's hungrier now maybe than ever.
We mentioned the two Louisiana 5-stars right now with Blaine and Big Rich. A couple of those out-of-state guys that I mentioned in Boobie Feaster and Haven Finney, two guys that are now 16th and 17th in the country on the Rivals new rankings, and are guys that were 2027 prospects just a few months ago and have since reclassed. For those young guys to be 5-stars in this class, kind of, share your thoughts or what that shows about them and where they are at this stage in their development. Now in a class with guys all a year older than them to still be considered top 20 guys in the country.
Yeah, what's intriguing here is, with the reclassification, you look at Boobie and you look at Havon, and they're very young for this 2026 class. I remember when you introduced me to Havon last summer, and then now getting a look at him earlier last month, earlier this spring. There's no way not to be intrigued by what this kid brings to the cornerback position. I mean, he's one of the best pure outside corners I've seen in this class for, in the last few months, this entire offseason. I can, the way he was moving it with SFE, the way he closed on the ball in coverage, his length, his build. And we know that Corey Raymond picks his guy at the beginning of every cycle. And this is the guy that was dripping with the most talent. And you can really see what Corey saw. And for Boobie has been so advanced for so long. Obviously, he trains with pros. He's always been the younger guy in this receiver room at DeSoto, or the guys that he trains with. And now he's that guy, and he's stepped up to that challenge. I know you saw him in battle last month, and I think it's safe to say that every time he's on the field, he is either the best player or he is the person who made a play that everybody is talking about. I love the fact that he's young. I love the fact that he has always been a standout performer, whether he was the young kid named Boobie or now the 5-star who reclassified named Boobie. I'm super excited for him, obviously being a Texas kid now, to see what he does as a senior for DeSoto High School. It's a team that throws the ball a ton, and they're going to ask a ton of their superstar. I think that Boobie is going to play at OT7 this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if he found his way to the finals in June. But those are just two kids that there's a lot of intriguing corners in this class. Jordan Edmonds, who's committed to Alabama, Samari Matthews out of North Carolina. And then there's Havon Finney, who already a 5-star, and I think could end up being the number one corner in this class when it's all said and done. And then for Boobie, I'm just wondering, how high can he get? This is a fantastic class of receivers. You talk about Tristan Keys, Sedarian Morgan are two guys in front of him. You got players like Jace Matthews and Jabari Mack right behind him. I'm curious, does Boobie end up staying kind of in that as a third 5-star in the class, a top 15 or 16 kid, or is he someone at the end of the day that we're talking about as the number one wide receiver in the country? And I don't think that would be absurd in any way if we're having that conversation in a few months.
You guys have 23 5-stars on the list, and one of the guys that's right out there on kind of the doorstep of that knocking is another guy we've talked an awful lot about, Lamar Brown, who I think probably has a similar attitude right now to what we were talking about Big Rich a few months ago. If he's wanting in to that conversation by the end of this, Lamar is obviously a guy that we're watching right now. In a couple months, he'll have a commitment decision. Just kind of share your latest on Lamar, thoughts on him as, one of the top couple of 4-star prospects in y'all's rankings, update this round and kind of what you hope to see from him the rest of the way.
This is one of the most unique situations I've ever, I think, witnessed, or I don't want to say that I'm a part of it, but I am covering it. So I'd like to say that I'm a part of it, where you have such an elite athlete that he has the ability and the opportunity to play either on the offensive or defensive lines. And that's of the 4 schools that are, leading in his recruitment, Miami, Florida State, LSU, and A&M, all schools are open to him playing on either side of the ball. and are recruiting him to play whatever he wants. Now, we know that Texas A&M prefers him on the defensive line. They view him as the number one defensive lineman in the country. LSU is recruiting him to play on the D-line, but they are still leaving it open to offense. And the same goes for Miami, where he visited 2 weeks ago. And the same goes for Florida State, which was recruiting him originally as an offensive lineman. I know ESPN just made him the number one player in the country at the defensive line. But he's going to play largely on the offensive side of the ball as a senior, again, for U-High. To me, I don't think Lamar has made up his mind about what position he ultimately wants to play. I think if he were to go on the offensive line route, he is a unquestioned, no-brain, 5-star offensive lineman. His tape is as sick at offensive line as any player in the country. And when you talk about guards getting paid at premium value in today's NFL, Lamar brings not only his frame, but his feet, his mobility, his functional strength, his ability to block in space, his ability to reach multiple levels as a blocker. And then what he showed at Under Armour in New Orleans was that he didn't even have a blemish in pass protection. It was one of the most dominant performances from an offensive lineman. And I think if the decision were mine, I would make him a 5-star offensive lineman today, right now, no question, no regrets. As a defensive lineman, where, again, he has plenty of good film at this point, and he was very, very, very good playing defensive line at Under Armour Next in New Orleans. I think he could be ranked in the top 30 or 40 in the country as a defensive lineman. My question is, like, how good can he get playing just defensive line? If he's specialized, if he trains, if he, opened up his arsenal of pass rush moves, he wins reps based off pure speed and strength and those combination of physical abilities. But he's more privy to playing offensive line. So I think it's just unique in that he has the ability to choose. But to me, I mean, he's a no question 5-star offensive lineman, or he is just one of the best in the defensive linemen in the country. And his evaluation will kind of come after he commits, or rather he commits to a position. But it's one of the more tantalizing storylines of this class, that you have this uniquely athletic prospect that has the ability to play on either side of the ball at a very, very high level. And like, the schools that are recruiting him are pretty much like, hey, do whatever you want as long as you do it here.
That's how you end up with the headlines, like when you talk to him after the Tulane conversation of the Travis Hunter in the trenches, if he wanted to stay home. And for folks kind of contextualizing where this super talented two-way lineman is on these rankings, in terms of offensive linemen, you guys have 3 5-star tackles, and Lamar's listed as the top interior offensive lineman in the country. On the defensive side, Big Rich, obviously, who we just talked about as a defensive tackle, and a couple of edge rushers are in that 5-star range. And again, Lamar is right there, kind of knocking on the door as a potential 5-star later on this year, depending on how some of these rankings go. But the position thing is so interesting to me when it comes to the ranking stuff, because when I had the last round of Prep Red Zone rankings, I was looking at watching what we saw from Big Rich through the course of that Edna Carr playoff run, and then knowing everything that we've seen from Lamar, and also knowing that we don't know if we're projecting him as an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, or, is he trying to potentially be a tackle at the next level, which anyone on the offensive line theoretically wants to do, or will he be comfortable sliding inside to guard where he could be excellent? And I think the positional versatility then becomes the conversation of, is that a plus, or is that a drawback of the uncertainty of not knowing what you're projecting? But he's been so interesting to watch his recruiting process take shape, and I feel like will remain incredibly interesting to watch as we hit these summer camps and then a decision on July 4th.
Yeah. I mean, you have to imagine that wherever he commits to might be the precursor in what position he ultimately plays. If you're looking at the two teams out in front, A&M and LSU, right now both are currently recruiting him on the defensive line, and we know for sure A&M loves him at that position. As we mentioned earlier, he's a number 1 defensive lineman on their board for 26, and they got to camp him out and work him out there last summer. LSU for the longest time was recruiting him to play offensive line. Brad Davis was his lead recruiter, and Brian Kelly started the charge this spring before he visited campus in the end of February about recruiting him on the defensive line. They compared his role to that of Savion Jones, who's now obviously getting ready for the NFL. But to me, from what I understand from Lamar and in his recruitment, LSU is still leaving that door open for offensive line. I think it'd be silly for any of these schools to close off that option for him as he figures out, what he's doing with his high school coaches, with his parents, and trying to figure out what he's going to do for his future, not only what uniform he'll be donning, but where he'll be putting his hand in the dirt.
Yeah, I think you have to keep that door open. When you're a guy that is that talented and has the potential that high on both sides of the ball as a program, it's a blessing for that guy to have that versatility to his his positional fit. And so you just say, you know what, go on ahead and sign here. This is a great fit for you in all of the ways of where could be your future home and what we're going to prepare you to be on either side of the football long term. Because obviously a guy like Lamar wants to make the NFL, and we'll figure that out and be happy either way. You can play either side of the ball. Also notable in that range, right on the, I keep saying doorstep, but right on that bubble of trying to be a 5-star, not a state guy for fans of LSU to know. And Darius Gray, who was right there behind Lamar as the next interior offensive lineman. I know Brad Davis and company have been recruiting him pretty heavily, so we'll see where that fantastic Virginia interior offensive lineman ends up. But I know the reason that you're here this week is you want to talk about Aaron Weiss, the new coach of Isidore Newman. You were excited about that news on Twitter from Garland Gillen and a few other folks down in the city. There's been some notable coaching movement this offseason for sure, and it's always fun to watch guys that we've known for a while and seen be assistants at different stops get that opportunity to go be a head coach for the first time. Aaron, obviously, at Isidore Newman. Mikey Corville, another guy who I love, was texting with him a couple of days ago about his opportunity to head back to Turlings and go take over that program. And the list kind of goes on. But I think folks at Turlings kind of know a little bit about Mikey from his time under his dad and everything, and kind of know what to expect. For Weiss to be heading down to the city and filling some big shoes, and another guy that we love very much, Nelson Stewart, who was the head coach of that Newman program for so long. What's your outlook for the Greenies and what they're getting in that, fantastic young football and bowling coach?
Well, the bowling team is going to be prestigious. I mean, buy stock now and buy all of it you can. Listen, what an impossible task to try to replace Nelson Stewart at Newman. Obviously, he's a alum, but the he lifted the program on his very long tenure run there. I think when he left for that job in Georgia, I think we were all surprised. Obviously, he had been connected to other jobs and offered other jobs in the New Orleans metro area in the past. So for him to kind of leave his alma mater and basically get a fresh start in a different state was eye-opening. So I've been keeping tab, waiting for someone to fill this Greenies job, and I love the fit for Aaron Weiss. Coach Stu was an offensive guy, and the last 15 years of watching Newman football, we've seen so many different great athletes and quarterbacks that come from uptown, whether it was Jay Tyler to Arch Manning to Eli Friend at quarterback. And what you're getting with Aaron Weiss is you're going to keep that offensive blueprint in place. And Newman is going to score points, and they're going to score a lot of them. This year, they're obviously Will Randall's little brother, Jake Randall, is their bell cow. They have a great offensive line that's always a centerpiece of that team. And they have some skill position players, of course, but what you're getting with Aaron being the head coach now is, I think, that offensive blueprint to continue to be a force on the scoreboard. That's what they love uptown. They love points. To play in that district, you got to keep pace with the Riversides, and you got to keep up with the Country Days. I'm excited for Aaron to get his shot. Of course, it's bittersweet because it's going to be extremely strange to be on Lupin Field without Nelson Stewart there. But, I'm excited because, with this, a young breath of fresh air, you get a lot of new culture, And I'm excited to see that the kids respond to a new face, a new source of energy, a new culture in place for the Newman Greenies.
Yeah. Hey, look, Nelson brought himself his fair share of energy to that program too, obviously through the years. But I texted him. It sounds like, after the news of his hire, whenever that was, a couple months back, it sounds like a great opportunity for him out there in Georgia, and one that he just ultimately, couldn't pass up that opportunity. But now you get the new voice that comes in, and certainly, Vice is going to come in and be a guy with an awful lot of energy, and a guy that every stop of the way that he's had as an assistant, you can see the genuine relationship and how close he and his players are, and how much love and respect there is there between the two sides. And so certainly an exciting guy to bring into that program. Same thing with, all of these coaching changes, and I didn't make a list going into this. And so I don't want to get too deep down the list and then leave somebody out, but just, those guys that we mentioned in Vice and Mikey, I think, some of the things I said about Vice, you can say the same thing about Mikey as a defensive coach, but a high energy guy, a guy that's very passionate about what he does and who he's doing it for. That really kind of resonates with the kids. And so excited for these opportunities for these two guys, who were two of the newer coaching announcements this offseason. But there's going to be a lot of fresh new faces in some new places that we'll be looking forward to this fall for sure.
I'm already looking forward to the fall. I'm done with the offseason. I'm ready to bring on the football. I'm back.
I know. Mentally, I'm already into season preview mode and just kind of like unpacking the storylines of what we're looking for this fall. So I'm excited to get to that. But we obviously, have a long haul through this offseason still to go. We've got spring ball, which is always a lot of fun for us to kind of bounce around and see some folks without the pressure of a game on Friday night looming ahead. We'll be out there for the college camps, obviously in June. And so make sure to keep up with us for updates throughout, even, we go into some episodes like this, and I don't realize we're going to get the official Stacey Bradford said Blaine is definitely shut down the rest of the way. You get little tidbits along the way on top of the big topics. And so, Sam, appreciate you, man, as always.
Listen, if you're a diehard listener of Recruit That Boot, I'm going to drop that little wrinkle in there for you, especially around that 20-minute mark, where I know things are getting frosty out here, So you got to drop that little intel and keep the people guessing,
When we're writing stories, we call those the gold coins along the way to keep folks engaged and interested. And so you're just dropping those gold coins for Jacob Colson and Robert Valdez and Norm Randall and all of our buddies who are tuning in to our, tens of loyal listeners every week. He's Sam Spiegelman. I'm Jarrett Roser. This is Louisiana for all y'all's Recruit That Boot. Until next time, y'all be well.